Hi, my name is Alexander Smith. Today is July 19th, and this is my persuasive speech for my public speaking course. The subject of the speech is how drafts and salary caps have bred competitive leagues and free market teams have not. Over the course of history, man's always sought out competition. Whether it's been shows of speed, shows of strength, people have always wanted to compete with one another. These competitions evolved to the point where people would form teams, and these goals and tasks suddenly became sports. The sports further organized to the point where they were set teams that could then compete against other people's teams that became sports leagues. And then they further organized to the point where we see them today, where there are people that pay just to come see these teams play. They're displayed on TV. They're all over the world. These sports leagues generate billions of dollars and have billions of fans and just popular in every area of the world. But over time, as these leagues without salary caps and drafts and such have got to the point where they've lost track of where they started, and that was competition. Many leagues, such as in European soccer, have just run rampant where only 2 or 3 teams are competitive and all the other teams are just left out. American sports use salary caps and drafts, and this has bred much more parity between the teams, and any team has a shot at the championship. Talents become much more evenly distributed, and it makes a much better experience for the fan. First, I'll start out with the NFL. The NFL implemented a salary cap in 1994. Over those 19 years, we have seen 12 teams win the title. Out of 32 teams, sure, only 12 have won, but out of 19, we've only seen, 7 repeats. That's not bad at all. Even over the past 10 years, we've seen 7, so there's only been 3 repeats. A lot of teams are competing, and a lot of teams have top-level talent that can win a championship. And they use a salary cap that's a hard cap, but then, of course, there are ways to get around it, such as restructuring contracts and such. But the hard cap still has made teams have to manage what they're spending, so they can't just throw big contracts. They can't pull in all the big players to one area because you can't afford it, or you'll be penalized. The NBA has a similar strategy in the U.S. where they use caps, but it's a soft cap. And a lot of teams have found that they can get by this by using things such as mid-level exception, bird rights. There are a lot of ways to pull past this soft cap, leaving teams that can almost double what the cap should be in their payroll. Now, of course, this cap has created some competition, but as you can see, it's still not great. A lot of teams can still pull in great players, and over the past 29 years since they put in the salary cap in 1985, we have seen 8 teams take the championship. Over the past 10, it's been 6 teams. So in between that time, there's only been 2 teams that have not repeated, and that was the Chicago Bulls and the Houston Rockets. And they also still have great teams. These teams that pull in big money are still able to find their way around the cap rules to put together great teams. Now, if we go over to the European soccer leagues, you'll see a much different story. The English Premier League was formed in 1992. Yes. And since then, since its inception, there's only been 5 different winners. And among those, Manchester United has counted for 13 of those titles. Among the rest of it, Chelsea has counted for 3, and Arsenal has counted for another 3. So out of the 21 total years, 19 of the championships have been won by 3 teams, most of them by 1 team. These teams they have a lot of money from big contracts and can pull in the best players whenever they want, and the smaller teams in the league just can't compete. If you look over at the La Liga, it's seen a very similar story. Now, it has had 9 winners over the 82 years it's been around. It's been around a long time. But if we take a closer look, of those 9 winners, of those 82 seasons, 54 of the championships are held between 2 teams, and that's Real Madrid and Barcelona. And they still just hold that death grip on the league. It hasn't been competitive since the 70s and 80s, and now it's to the point where, I can't remember exactly, but they're going over a decade, I believe, since one of these 2 teams have not won. Serie A, another similar story. It's been around for 116 years, and it has seen 16 different teams become the best and win it all. Which, that's a good amount, that's a lot, but that's over 116 years. Since then, three of these teams have won 65 of those 116. The big 3, as they call them, Juventus, AC Milan, and Inter. And those 3 have accounted for the last 12, and you go back even farther, and they're still pulling in. It's just an occasional win from some smaller club. These European leagues have just been constantly dominated constantly seeing just a few small select teams dominating their leagues, because once these teams accumulate a little bit of money, other teams just can no longer compete. The U.S. has its own soccer league that utilizes salary caps and drafts. That's the MLS. Through its salary caps and draft, we've seen a lot more parity. It's been around for 17 years, and it's seen 9 different champions. And over the past 10, it's seen 7. That's significantly different from any 3 of these big leagues you can find in Europe. And just from looking at these stats, you can see cap leagues just generate competition. These European leagues are just being dominated by a few select teams because they have a lot of money. They're pulling in big money from their owners that may be wealthy, their TV contracts, because they have bigger fan bases. They get the bigger TV contracts, and it just stacks, and it becomes a big rolling hill of these. They just get richer and richer, where the other teams can't compete. This can be seen really easily with Man City out of Manchester. It is in the EPL with several other teams, and it shares the city with Man U, who very often dominates the league. In the past few years, it's seen a new owner that is very wealthy, and he has poured money into this team, where it has become just one of those regular teams that never had a shot. Suddenly, they're a competitive team because they have money. They can afford to now. They're owned, I think, as of like 2 or 3 years ago, they were runner-up in the league. That's significant. That's like a level of competition they've never seen. Pretty much, as you can see, then when you go over to the NFL, because the drafts allow the bad teams to pull in better players, and the caps keep people from distributing the talent, the caps keep people from collecting all the talent in the league onto one team. Talent's distributed better, there's more parity, a lot more wins are shared instead of a few dominating everyone else. And can you imagine, what's this like for the smaller fans of some of these European teams? They may be close by to one of these small teams, but they don't really have a shot at ever bringing home any hardware. They want to be fans of their hometown team, but they know that team just doesn't have the money, and it'll likely never win a championship in their lifetime. And even for the bigger fans, what do they get out of it? It's like going to, at the end of the season, you're competing with 2 or 3 teams. What's the point of the other 15 teams in the league? Why don't you just play a few games against them, see who's the best? It's almost just almost other games are practically useless at that point. It's like watching a game. It's almost like watching the Globetrotters versus the Washington Generals. Are you going to be a fan of Washington Generals to watch that inevitable loss at the end of the game? The NFL has a slogan, any given Sunday, and you can apply this have a shot to win it all. Then these non-cap leagues have robbed the fans of a suspense, of the rush of suspense that comes with a competitive sporting event. And at the begin, if you use a cap league at the beginning, it can be anyone's year.